Hey guys, I'm Voylin, and in today's video we will talk about the Nihongo Sou Matome series. These books are very efficient to learn and review Japanese, especially if you're following the JLPT tests. And it's no secret that I've been a fan of these books ever since I started studying Japanese, but every book has some negatives and these do as well. So let's take a quick view inside of those books and let's discuss the pros, the cons, and my opinion, my recommendation, if these books are for you or not. So yeah, let's dive in. So the Nihongo Sou Matome series is a series of books specifically made for people who are taking the JLPT, the N2, the N4, N5, N3. I don't have an N1 book yet. But yeah, it's basically for people who are going for the JLPT any tests. They have the N5 and all the way until the N1. The books are divided into weeks. For example, this one is 6 weeks, but if you go to the listening book of the N3, that's for example 4 weeks. Go to the grammar book of N2 and that one becomes 8 weeks. So these books are generally, like, if you use these to review before the JLPT test, you will generally start 2 months before the test happens. This one is specifically for grammar, but if you look at the book, you can see this one has vocab, kanji, grammar, reading, and listening. The way they do this is basically 1 week kanji, second week becomes vocab, next week becomes grammar, and so on till the listening and reading parts. I like this because the N5 is really kind of short. I'm going through the book right now, it's almost finished. I like that they put it in one book because else the prices add up. Now all these books are generally around like 1,500 yen or 1,200 yen. It really depends on which one you go for. The ones with the CD are a little bit more expensive, but yeah, sort of shanai. But then, so N5 has all topics in one book. If you go to the N4, you can see one for kanji, vocab, and the other one for bunpo, dokai, and shokai, listening, reading, grammar. So then they suddenly make 2 books, which again I kind of like. And then it goes to the grammar, all the separate books. So this one is grammar, there's one for listening, grammar, reading, kanji, and vocab. And these are the kind of practice books, like these are not actually named the Nihongo Sou Matome series, but they're from the same brand, they're the same kind of style, well, same kind of style. These are basically just tests. I really like these books, and if you need any book for the JLPT, like to review, go for these. They have an explanation as well of why certain answers are wrong, so yeah, very great to review before you test that. They're finished in 4 weeks, all of these, even the N2, the N5, 4 weeks. Every day you're supposed to do a certain amount of pages, so day 5 of week 1, day 5 of week 2, and so on and so on. These books, like I said before, you finish in a couple of weeks. The way this works is every single day you get a page with some information of how things work. So this is sesame, and then you have your questions. For the answers, you go to the next page and you see your answers on the bottom and so on. And every end of the week, you have a review, like a whole test area. And if you go to the answer sheet on the back, if I can find it, the answers for the question and for the whole test are basically on the back. So every day you get a new topic to do, a new page, new information, learn it, and then read it. Something I would advise is go to the next page the day before, read everything, put it into your Anki, and the next day when you do those questions and review everything, this will go a lot smoother. So this is basically how these books work. So again, N5, 1 book, N4, 2 books, but the moment that you go to N3, N2, N1, you have 5 books in total. Which is not that bad because the price is not really expensive. But yeah, let's go over to the pros and the cons of these books. And after that I will give a short recommendation and my opinion. So before I start talking about pros, these books are really mainly intended for people who are taking the JLPT test and want to review. These are not books made to actually learn from. At least that's not their primary focus. They're more kind of a reviewing. However, I still find them quite useful for my overall Japanese studying, learning experience. So yeah, really depends on your study style. Up to the positives. So up to the positives. Number 1. I find them very easy to use. They're very well laid out. They're very clear to follow. Every day you get a new thing that you need to do, a new page that you need to do. You have your explanations and then you have your questions. And that's basically every time like that, unless it's Sunday. Well, Sunday, it really depends on when you start these books, but at the end of the week you have a big review test. For the rest, everything stays very similar across all the books. 2. I find the dividing into weeks and days very practical. You don't need to do any planning on your part, so it's basically you pick up the book and you start, keep some paper in between so you know where you are for the next day, and that's about it. You really don't need to do anything more than that. So no planning, yay! My lamp just died, forgot to charge it. As long as you don't do more than 2 of these books a day, burning out from studying is practically impossible. Well, really depends on what else you do besides these books, but don't go too wild, do only 1 page a day. Well, one day a day. Maximum 2 books. I find 2 books is like the perfect amount. Go to 3 books and you have too many things to review. The day-week system that these books have, I like it, I approve. Positive point number 3. The way that they are laid out, it's very easy to make your own lists. For example, you can go through these books at first, make notes in your Anki, memorize whatever you use, paper flashcards, and you can have your own list for grammar, for vocab, for anything that you need a list of. Practice them. When you're done with practicing those lists, then you can go onto the book, do the questions and see if you actually know it. So these are great to make your list so you know what to study. Positive point number 4. Compared to other books, these books are very reasonably priced. For example, if you look at the Genki books, those are like 1000 yen, 3000 yen or something, or above, I think 3300. Don't quote me on that. These books are only around like 1200, 1500 a book. So yeah, if you need more than 1 book, it's probably going to be a little bit more expensive, but I don't think there are many people who buy all the books. So they are very reasonably priced, and that's a very good thing, especially for Japanese learning resources. They don't come cheap. And the last positive point, they're honestly the best way to check if you're up to a certain level or not. If you're ready to go for the N3 and 2 example, if you do these books, you can pass them easily. You will know you will be able to pass the JLPT test easily. Which is kind of helpful to know, so you don't waste your money paying for the test and then failing. And let's go over to the negatives. One of my biggest complaints about these books are the questions. I know that's like a big part of the books, but I find that there are not enough questions. For example, for the grammar part, you only have like 7 questions a day, and I don't find that enough for the amount of things that we know and like have to learn. Like for example, we got 3 grammar rules and only 7 questions. I would have liked to see at least like this whole page filling questions, but yeah, I find them kind of insufficient. Luckily it makes up with this book. This book, like 500 questions, also only 1200 yen. So also very reasonably priced. But we're talking about the negatives now, we're talking about the negatives. Another thing that I have as a complaint, like from the questions, the listening book. So the listening book for the N3 especially, like I haven't done the other ones yet, I haven't taken a look at them closely yet. The listening book is only 4 weeks and it does not have the big test at the end of each week, which make them feel like less of a value compared to the other books. So the listening books are probably something that I won't recommend, and just do something else for listening. There are enough videos and such, so that's probably the only book in the series that I cannot really recommend because I don't see that much of a value in them. They're still helpful and they still have like some information on the page that can be helpful, but I just found them less helpful. The JLPT test is mainly focused, especially on like N3 levels and higher, mainly focused on Kenjogo, Sankeigo, yeah, basically the politeness levels. So if you just study those, you'll be fine. Negative point number 2. Like I said, these books are very reasonably priced, but if you pick up these books from when you start learning Japanese, and for example you start with the N5, the N4 books, the N3, the N2, and most people don't go for the N1, but yeah. So that's N5, N4 has 2 books, then you go to N3, that's 5 books. So yeah. And then another 5 books, so you come at 13 in total if you want to have all the books from N1, N2 till N5. But that's then without these books, then you need 3 more. Because the N5 and the N4 book are combined into one of these smaller ones. Again, this is not a Nihongo Sou Matome series, but it basically is, in my opinion. An easy fix that you could do to get around the big cost of buying all those books is, if you live in Japan, check out the library. Most libraries have Nihongo Sou Matome series, and most libraries are very advanced that you can even just request them through the site of the library. They arrive, you take them. Libraries in Japan, very great learning resource even for like JLPT books. The other ones that I have, for example, the N5 and the N4, and all the N3 books that I have, those are all from the library that I'm renting out. I only bought the ones that I really needed because I like these books and I also want to support them. All these small ones I bought myself, and these are 2 of the ones that I bought myself because I am terrible with Japanese grammar, like really bad. And quick other positive points, all these books have separate topics, so you can see at what you score lower to know what you should improve upon. So basically these books also have 3 topics and 3 categories. You can see in which category you're stronger or weaker and improve the one that you're weaker on. So yeah. But again, they're very reasonably priced, so if you really want to use these books and really like them, just pay for them, support some people who make these books. Yeah, that's what I did. And the last point is, these books are all basically test books. They exist to review your knowledge. Like, they have the explanation part, but there's not that much explanation going around. They just show some quick examples. For example, the N3 book, especially for the grammar part, when I started with this one, I was kind of annoyed with how it's set up. So you have nani nani reteru, nani nani ni nani nani reta, nani nani sete kudasai. These basically have a very similar meaning, which is kind of annoying, especially because like they have some kind of English explanation and the English translation of the sentences, but it doesn't really tell when you should use them. Like when you mention the fact without a subject, the passive form is used. Often used somehow a difficult situation as a result of something, and expression used when asking for forgiveness from other person. But if you read the question, like the sentences, it's I like these books a lot, but to mainly use them for studying from, it gets kind of difficult, especially because the explanation for the grammar part is not really that great. The other books are all fine, except for the listening maybe. The grammar parts, I really needed to study more for grammar, and maybe it's just because I struggle with grammar that these explanations don't really make sense, but yeah. Just so you know, the explanation in these books are not really great because these are books meant for reviewing. So last up, do I recommend these books? Like, what's my opinion about them? If you really want some decent books to study Japanese with, I would say just go for these. They're great. you really won't regret. They're really a good value for the price. Especially these little ones, because they still have some explanation if you mess up, so you know what you did wrong. But they're very great and decent books, especially if you actually go for the JLPT test. If you don't go for the JLPT test, they can still be worth it, but then you really need to know, like, can I afford to buy these, or should I just use free resources? Because most people who don't go for the JLPT test don't really need Japanese, so investing money in something that you don't really need, yeah, maybe. But in general, like I said, they're very reasonably priced. You really won't regret buying them. And yeah, I basically can recommend them for anybody who's studying Japanese or studying for the JLPT test. They can be expensive if you buy them all, but they're probably the last book. Like, if you can only buy one book to study one book series to study Japanese with, go for the Nihongo Sou Matome series. For people who want another recommendation, if you really want to study Japanese but don't want to spend a lot of money on multiple books, just go for Mina no Nihongo 1 and 2. You won't get that far compared to just going for these books, but Mina no Nihongo is all in Japanese, so for people who self-study, I really recommend it because it really pushes you to actually like study, look up things, learn the Japanese that you need to know to do the book. And some advice for people who go through these books: you really need something, like in these small books especially, you can see the answer, like the answer is on the other page. The answer is right here. You really need some kind of black piece of paper to put behind it, because else you can see the answer through it. And once you know, you cannot unsee it. You really cannot unsee it on every page that you can see the answer through it. So use a black paper, because the moment that you will notice, it's too late. And another one of my recommendations when you use these books: take it slow. Don't try to do multiple days a week. Just take your time to go through them. Don't do more than 2 books at once. The moment that you go over 2 books, the reviewing, daily reviewing that you need to do, if you put them all into your Anki, it's kind of too much. I tried to do all the in 3 books at once. I got until the first week and then I had to stop, review all the things that I've learned from these books, and then yeah, basically start where I left off, but book by book, because it gets kind of heavy. These books contain a lot of information. Every 2 pages you have a lot of things that you can add, like minimum 10, maximum 20, 25 things. Really depends on what you already know. From the end to, I still have a lot of work to do. So thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all later. I really hope you enjoyed and learned something about these books, and yeah, if you're considering to buy them, you won't regret it. Else look online, you can probably find them second-hand, or go to the library, especially if you live in Japan, they probably have them. So thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all in my next video. Bye bye. Good luck studying Japanese. Especially when there's a baby in the house, you don't get any quiet time for studying.